Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Ellie. It's lovely to be here. I wish I could see a few more of you, but I'm going to give you a big wave. Hello to everyone. I know that I know quite a lot of you. To those of you who it's your first experience of watching me, I'm sorry, I'll make lots of mistakes, but please grab a glass of wine, grab some biscuits, put your feet up. I have two absolutely amazing writers to introduce you to tonight. I am thrilled to say that they're joining Avon. Absolute pleasure. Both of whom are extremely experienced writers, both of whom who have a lot to tell us and a lot to say. Great writers. You're going to be absolutely delighted to read their books when they come out. Hello, Simon. Hello, Jonathan. You really don't need me. You're both much more experienced writers, I think, than I am, to be honest with you. But I get the pleasure of asking you both questions. So lucky me. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
We're going to kick off with a kind of quickie, just to say the books that are coming out, first of all, with Avon, give us your elevator pitch, give us the hook, give us the exciting, punchy bits, and leave us all dangling for more. Let's go to Jonathan.
Okay, there are three friends who meet every week for coffee in the local garden centre because the parking is good and the queues aren't too bad. And one week they bump into a friend of theirs and they realise quite quickly that their friend of theirs is not very well. She's in the early stages of dementia. She's rather confused. And she says to them at some point that people are coming to the house and somebody said she'd be better off dead. And they're quite distressed by this, but they don't think too much of it. And then a week later, she's found dead. And the thing I haven't said is that these three ladies are retired primary school teachers, because in my experience, there is nobody more expert at getting to the truth of a matter and a dilemma than your lady primary school teacher. And I say that after 30 odd years experience.
Fantastic. That sounds fabulous. And I'm going to just explain there. You're a deputy head.
Yes.
Jonathan, right? So you really are writing what you know in terms of those characters. Fantastic. That sounds amazing. Simon, go for it. Terrify us.
Thank you, Helen. So it's set on the island of Anglesey. Laura is our central character. 3 years ago, she moved to the island after her husband was killed in the line of duty, and she was working as a hostage negotiator for the Manchester Police. She now runs a business skills company on Anglesey, and at the beginning of the book, a drug gang from Liverpool are coming into Beaumaris Beach to set up a county lines drug operation, and the police are there to capture them. They rumble that the police are there, and on the way back, there's a mechanical failure, and they end up boarding a ferry that is going off to Puffin Island for the day to take tourists. And on that, there is a school party. And the local police ask Laura, will she intervene and come down and help them out as a hostage negotiator? At first, she says that she can't do it because of the terrible experiences that she had 3 years earlier. But then she finds out that her son, Jake, is on the school party, and he's part of this kidnapping on the cruise. So, and then it develops from there. So I'm not going to tell any more, but that's the opening kind of sequence.
Fantastic. It sounds like one of those books where it's going to put everyone off sending their child on a day trip to Puffin Island.
Probably.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, both great things. What's really interesting about crime, of course, is that it's kind of lumped into one genre, but it's got across this massive spectrum, and it's really interesting that we've got two authors with us tonight who are writing at opposite ends of the spectrum. But of course, crime is crime, and it always involves the same sort of processes. You've always got to set up your mystery, set up your character, go through kind of those reveals, and you still have to have that big ending. Really interesting that people choose to write this in different ways, and of course what we call cozy crime, I don't think there's anything very cozy about dead bodies, whether, you know, however it's written. You know, I know that, Jonathan, this is your first novel, but you've got a lot of experience writing plays before this, and radio plays, and you've been, you know, very successful. So how has writing a crime novel been a different experience to you than writing what you've done before? Tell us a tiny bit about what you've done before.
Yes, I've written primarily theatre plays and also plays for Radio 4. So writing a play is a bit like going for a sprint, I would say. There's a lot of thinking that goes into it, but once you start writing it, it's quite quick. And when you come to edit it, you can read it all at a sitting. And then when I started writing a novel, you realize very quickly that you've, instead of getting 30 or 40 pages to read through, you've got 100 or 200 or 300, and you have to pace yourself differently. So to me, it was a case of pacing myself. It was the same skill, but a different skill, almost like two different branches of baking, you know, sort of like bread and cakes, said he, having watched Bake Off last night.
Lovely. I can't cook at all. My husband has literally banned me from the kitchen, so that's the wrong analogy for me. I'm useless, but fantastic. Well, it's very exciting. So Simon, a different type of question. You've written a lot of other books. You're an old hand at this. We know that. But in terms of the other things you've written and the things you're writing currently, what's your process? Do you plan the plot twist and your reveal first? Or do you just start it and see where it takes you? Planner or pantser, as we say in the trade. That sounds awfully pretentious. There we go. My first point to the night.
Hybrid. So a bit of both, unfortunately. I do always start with the twist. So for me, it's about finding that moment towards the end of the book where the reader sort of his mouth jaw drops and says, "Oh my God, I can't believe it was the mother," or whatever it might be. But that moment where it kind of everything twists on its head, and I love those moments, and it's sort of kind of what everything builds towards. And then for me, it's going backwards from there, trying to cover my tracks in the lead up to that moment. And I kind of know the beginning and the end always. And sometimes I meander through the middle and find other stories that I think are more interesting and follow those. So yeah, a bit of both, really.
Yeah, I know that feeling. The problem is your mind becomes very full, doesn't it? You end up with a lot going on in your head. I'm an absolute terrible pantser. It's a kind of one idea, but I just have to start writing, because halfway through the planning stage, I'm so desperate to get onto the keyboard that I can't quite bear finishing any of the planning. So I just get on with it. You know, this is not a good thing to do if you're thinking about writing a novel for the first time. Preferences, guys, in crime novels, big shocking revelations or slowly unraveling mysteries? No reason why you can't have a slow unravel, actually, with a big shock in it somewhere. Jonathan, how do you feel?
I like both. I read a lot of crime fiction, and as you've said right at the very beginning, it's massive and it's wide and there's so much spectrum. So, but I do love those moments Simon's just described, when you read something and, like you say, you go, "Oh my goodness me, that has really surprised me." I think I go back to Agatha Christie. I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan. And I find, like, when you're busy and you haven't quite got the mental space to take on something new, there's a great comfort in reading a book you've read many times before. And she's the kind of person I go back to. So you really admire the craftsman of the craftsmanship of the crime, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it has to be both, really. It's sort of, I quite like everything unraveling quite slowly. But again, everything, whether I'm watching, reading a book or watching a kind of crime thriller on TV, I'm looking for that. There's part of my head that's already kind of planning ahead, going, what is the twist going to be? What's that moment that we kind of go, some shocking revelation where we don't see something happening. And as Jonathan said, it's like, that comes all the way from Agatha Christie, who's the kind of sort of queen of crime.
Yeah. And I have to say, I just watched, I probably shouldn't be plugging, I just watched Midnight Mass on Netflix. And what's interesting about that is that they did this terribly slow, lots of monologues, quite a nice, slow, kind of melting into the plot, and you didn't really know what was going to happen. And actually, it made those big gasp moments all the more compelling and interesting because you just don't see them coming. And actually, what I think is really interesting is when you manage to change the pace at which a novel goes and suddenly take the audience by surprise. So leading on nicely to Killing Your Darlings. Now, I think George R. R. Martin probably does this better and more often than anyone else. What's your feeling about Killing Your Darlings? Do you mind killing off characters you love? Do you hesitate to do it? Do you feel guilty for it? I know I've occasionally killed characters I adore, and I actually go through a slightly guilty phase, and I find it difficult to do it. But I think hugely rewarding for the audience from that perspective. Simon?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've done it twice. First time wasn't too painful. The second time was very painful. And actually, I like to write with music on, and I sort of had this kind of slightly kind of sentimental music playing while writing this character out, and I ended up kind of really, really upset. Yeah. Because for me, she'd been real and she'd been in so many books. It was, and I suppose maybe that's why hopefully it rang true for my audience, for my readers. So yes, I think it's something that we do once in a while. I think it keeps the readers on their toes because it means that you can never quite relax because you never quite know if you can kill off a main character or one of the sort of supporting characters, then hopefully the stakes are high and anyone can go. So I think that's important.
That's a really good point, actually. Readers, I don't think ever do expect you to kill the characters that they've fallen in love with, whether it's over the course of a series or just within one book. Jonathan, Killing Your Darlings in what I'm going to call cozy crime, but I do that hesitantly. Very difficult because actually in the sort of crime and Spoonful of Murder is fantastic, and you build up these wonderful rich characters that people are just going to absolutely adore. How do you feel about killing characters off in books?
Yeah, well, you see, being my first novel I finished, and I'd never particularly set out to write a crime novel. My main thought reading them is like, wow, these are great. I don't think I could ever manage this. So when I did write a crime novel and I did kill somebody off, I think it was like Simon said, I sort of felt I had a huge sense of responsibility. There was not it was something I didn't take lightly because sometimes I watch these things on television. I watch Murder, She Wrote all the time. And, this Jessica Fletcher must have been near murder several 300 times. And I would have thought if that was me, I would just be so shocked and upset and traumatized. So, yeah, it was a big thing to kill somebody. And what happens in the future, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Also quite good fun, though. I think quite good fun characters that you love.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Google research. We all have to do it. We all hope to go to the locations that we use and we have a good idea of the characters, but inevitably you get to a point in your book where you have to do a bit of Google research. And I say, I will open this with the worst thing I've ever Googled with, is how many people would a fully grown roasted human feed? So given that that's the starting point, gentlemen, be honest, but only for the purposes of your book. What's the strangest thing you've Googled?
I can go. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go
ahead,
first.
I mean, I've done all sorts of. I mean, obviously, some of my history is very odd, like making bombs and all that kind of stuff. But for a serial killer, I had to look up how to boil a human head, and then what it looks like as it boils, and then the dimensions as it gets smaller, which is sort of like
nice. That was lovely.
Pretty dark.
I hope no one's eating at the moment because we just put them properly off their dinner. Sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, mine's a lot more mundane. I've had to Google in the last week carbon monoxide poisoning, different types of bulbs you can buy at this time of year. And the big thing was the whole mechanics of when, if somebody's found unexpectedly dead, what are the processes, what's the time scale, all of that, getting that right.
Yeah.
So hearing you two talk, I feel like yes, I need to up my game somewhat.
I think the answer is we're going to be getting the visits from MI5 before
Yeah.
you do.
Okay, yeah.
So, you know, lucky you. So, I mean, we talked to a lot of crime fiction tonight. I know that I read very widely, and quite often when I'm writing a book, I don't read crime in the process of writing because I'm slightly terrified that I'm going to pick up someone else's narrative voice. And also I want to keep my head clear in terms of, you know, my own plotting. What do you guys like to read? Do you read crime or do you read outside of your genre, Jonathan?
I read a lot of children's books as part of my job, teaching in school year 6, which is great. I tend to also have a thing of revisiting books I've read before, and then my sister passes me across books she thinks I like, so I'll read them. But when you're sort of during term time, very often your head's just too full to do more than read 2 pages and fall asleep.
Yeah, yeah. Simon, you?
Um, no, I'm quite weird. I just read crime. I mean, I sort of read crime, and if I dabble in anything else, I always feel like, why did I not read a crime book? So just slightly obsessed.
That's music to every other crime author's ears, because you know that's what we want. We just want people reading crime, don't we? In reality, favorite criminals. I quite like watching the old true crime thing. I have to say, you know, I like the documentaries and all that stuff. Do you have a? It's completely wrong to say a favorite criminal. None of us has a favorite criminal. Do you have somebody historically, a figure that you found particularly interesting, that kind of, you know, sparks your imagination in terms of crimes, or a favorite crime book, anything like that? Simon?
I'm going to go back to serial killers again. I did a lot of research on serial killers when I wrote my book 3. So I read a lot about Dennis Nielsen. So although not favorite,
Yeah.
it was very interesting to try and get in his mindset. And, you know, however difficult that might be, it was sort of trying to make a serial killer feel real rather than a monster, I think was why it's interesting. So
Yeah, you're getting some support. I can see from our chat there, quite a lot of people saying yes, Dennis Nielsen, and talking about the documentaries. Jonathan, anyone that really sparked your imagination, or kind of, or even your terror, really? Anybody you were particularly afraid of that you
Yeah,
looked at?
growing up in the 70s, I had a huge fear of the Yorkshire Ripper.
Yeah,
Even now, I would hesitate to watch stuff about him or read stuff about him, because there was something about him, about the media coverage, about the terrible things he did, that just sort of seemed to touch on a very dark primal note in everybody. And
yeah.
we didn't even live in Nottingham, in Yorkshire. We lived in Nottingham, nowhere near. But that, so yeah, there was that terror I associated with this hidden criminal, this killer.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, we always talk about, when we talk about serial killers and that sort of thing, we tend to talk about them in America or different places, but we actually forget, you know, the experience of living, you know, through them, or through periods in history, don't we? When they're very much more real, it's not a distant story. So, you know, we've talked about true crime. Any crime authors you particularly love? I know, Jonathan, you said Agatha Christie, but anyone current for you both? Who's your go-to crime author that you like to read, and why? Go back to Jonathan.
Peter Robinson, because he sets them all in Yorkshire, and I, I, it's hard to say, but I just find I always see his books come out and think, oh yes, I'm going to get that. I'm going to have a Peter Robinson.
There you are, everyone. Helpful hint there from Jonathan. Peter Robinson been firmly recommended. Simon, who's your go-to?
At the moment, I'm reading a lot of American stuff. So I'm reading James Elroy, George Pelecanos. Maybe in some ways because it's a relief, not because I'm kind of getting away from. I'm writing a British crime book, and it's a very different style in that sort of noir style.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing at the moment. But
Yeah.
I read everything every crime books.
Yeah, I'm giving a second vote to Elroy. So that's, I'm with you there.
He wrote Elevator Pitch, didn't he? Yeah, I read that. That was great.
Yeah. Now I'm just looking at the time, so forgive me for looking away from you. Oh, we've got a couple more minutes. Next project, both of you. What are you working on as we speak? Simon, what's next for you?
I'm just finishing off my book for Avon, and then I'm ploughing through book 4 of my London crime series. And that's going to be out beginning of December, because I'm an indie publisher and I can turn it around very fast. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. There's a bit. How many books are you writing a year?
6, 7.
No.
Wow.
I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm leaving. I'm done.
Sorry.
I'm not. And I was about to say, do you have another job as well, like Jonathan? But you clearly don't. And if you tell me you do, I'm turning your camera off, because that's outrageous. Well, congratulations, and also everybody hates you. So I'm. I don't mean it. If I'm green slightly here, everybody, it's just jealousy. Jonathan, how you do? Jonathan, you have an incredibly demanding job that puts you in the middle of the sort of working day that none of us really wants in a school. I say that as somebody with 3 children. So I'm just happy to send you my 3 children in the morning and not get them back to the evening.
Well, I do. I'm very lucky because I love my job, and the school I work in is brilliant. The people in the school are fantastic. And to answer your question, I'm writing 3 things at the moment. I've got a second novel for Avon. I've got another. I've got another Radio 4 drama series going on. But I think actually the most important thing I'm writing at the moment is the school nativity play.
Oh.
Birds of Bethlehem. Yeah, it's. I hope we're going to be able to have a nativity play this year. Filling a hall full of people in these times wasn't on last year. There is talk about doing it outside, but we're right on the top of a hill in Yorkshire, so that would be a bit. I don't know how well that would work, but yeah, the nativity.
Yeah. It is possible you're the nicest crime writer in the UK at the moment. It's actually, I think possibly you're going to get the award for just being the nicest crime writer. I'm looking quickly at Q&As because we've got 2 minutes and I don't want you to go because you're both amazing. But people are asking, did you do any creative writing courses? And I can combine this with, do you have any advice for someone who writes a novel? So you've got a minute each, guys. Best advice and your experience and how you got to where you are. Simon?
I wrote scripts, so that kind of gave me a basis. I didn't do any creative writing courses. I read a lot. And in terms of advice, just write it, get it down, stop prevaricating, get to the end, get something get to the end of your first novel, even if it's sort of, as you're writing it needs work. But I think just get it down, is because you can sort of sit there thinking I'm going to write a great novel for decades.
Yeah. Absolutely. Jonathan?
I'd add to what Simon would say, no time is too short. People will say, oh, well, I need some time to write. And you'd say, right, sometimes in the morning, I might just write for 5 minutes or 10 minutes before I go to work. And sometimes you can have a brilliant idea and move everything forward. And sometimes I can be sat there for 6 hours and do very little other than play Free Cell and watch the Golden Girls on YouTube. So I think people feel they have to not be doing anything else to write. And to me, writing is something you can do anytime. And yeah, just do it. I think people are frightened to start. And it's like, no, go for it. And don't wait till you've got a week or a day, just 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I would only add to that. I heard Francesca Simon speak when I was just starting out, and she said, give yourself permission to write a bad first draft, which is sort of what Simon was saying. It doesn't matter. Start it, go through the soggy middle. And by the way, I can guarantee you that, like every other author in the world, the most painful bits will be 30,000 words to about 60,000 words. And then you're okay for 60 to 85 or 90, whatever you're doing. So be aware of the soggy middle, but, you know, give yourself permission. Write a bad first draft, but write a first draft, because you can't edit what you haven't written, which, you know, which really is what you're both saying. I'm going to have to wrap up. I'm going to get somebody waving at me in a moment. I just want to say thank you so much. I haven't met either of you in person yet. I will be delighted to meet you both in person when Avon are finally able to do more events. I'm so excited for both your books to come out. It's lovely to have new authors, such you know, such experienced writers, but really, really exciting new books coming out. Thank you so much for answering all the questions for me and everyone else. It was fantastic. I hope everyone's having a lovely evening there. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Enjoy your coffee and sachets, enjoy your face masks, and enjoy the proofs. And do, as ever, make sure you get in touch with all of us on social media. You know, ask us any questions, and do let us know what you thought this evening. I'm going to hand back over to Ellie. Thank you, guys.
Bye now. Thank you.